tuning, working on 2015 Volkswagen GTI today. We're going to do the Innovative Motorsports ethanol gauge sensor and CJM pod holder install. This one's a half tray, left side. Got a couple little pieces of 3M tape, adhesive just to hold it in place. But we're going to go through one of the ways to do it. Going to need some fuel line connectors. I got the Dorman ones here, 3/8 to 5/16. I'm going to put this in what I believe is an easy location right here, just because there's already a junction and 2 clamps. If you're running the MPI, it's probably better to go over here, which would make a bit more sense as far as when you have an extra fuel rail and sensors and everything. But if you're not planning on doing that, this is definitely the easier way to go, especially because you're not technically cutting into factory stuff. You're just working with what we already got. Got a bunch of tools over here. Maybe not everything you're gonna need, but I guess we'll kind of see how that goes. You're gonna want either 4 small clamps. What size are these? I believe they're the 6s, 1/4 inch clamp. You could use 2 larger ones too, one with the 8mm on it. It's gonna be for the actual connections for the fuel line fittings. First thing I'm gonna do is pop your battery off. So it's 10mm. Start at the negative. It's good to have a rag on hand. Loosen it. Just wiggle this thing up. Let's just cover it with a rag, that way it won't contact back down. All right, so if you want to relieve your fuel pressure, you can do it a couple ways. You could literally just leave the battery off for about a half an hour to an hour, something around that range, and it'll slowly relieve the pressure. If you're in a rush, just throw some rags underneath it, cover the entire area, put it kind of into its own little space, that way fuel has not really too much place to go. And this is a pig mat specifically for picking up all kinds of automotive liquids. Super great thing to have around, especially if you dump oil on the floor like we did with the Beamer. And then yeah, huge help. Not a bad idea for some safety glasses with this, but I like to live dangerously, so we're just gonna skip that part. Get some linesman pliers, something aggressive, get right onto the hose clamp, and there you go. A little relief in fuel pressure. This thing to wiggle up. And then instead of just popping this thing directly off, use some round pliers just to get on here. Don't go too aggressive, but just make sure that it'll wiggle. Go on top, cover the whole thing, just pop it off, and let it kind of do its thing. So this section right here, some of these clamps, like on the Golf R, it's actually not together on one side. These are not exactly the most fun to have to mess with. It is a bit of a pain in the ass. It is not necessarily going to be all that easy to do it, but I'll pop the line up, pop this up, and let's stuff this rag over here too, just in case. This is the fun part of messing with these clamps. We are not sponsored by Bang Energy, but they're delicious. Mr. Owak. Skip it and then be like, well, we're all done now. And nah, just kidding. It was a giant pain in the ass. Just go right back to it. The good thing about these is that they're kind of rounded, so you can use it to roll off the stuff. Just gotta create enough space so I can get the pliers back under there. Cutters. If you have a pair of flush cut dikes, the pliers, not these ones that have the little dent in there, but there's ones that are completely flat for cutting zip ties, that is way better than using these. The ones I do have are for zip ties. I have not grabbed these ones from Snap-on because every time he comes by, I tell him I can't remember what I needed to grab. Remember the first time I did this on my car? It took me like 30 minutes just to get this stupid thing off of here. They don't make it too easy. That's for sure. Get something to grip onto it and just get one to rotate. As soon as you got it to move, make sure you got something to catch any type of fuel. It is. One side. These are your fittings. Test fit for slapping everything together. Locks right in. Double check on here. You'll see the actual rib on the sensor. Then if you want to get these back off, squeeze and pop off, and now it stays kind of fixed on here. I'm down one of these clamps, but what I like to do, which what I did on my car, is use two in a really tight space and do opposite, because there's always going to be a slight, I wouldn't say weak point, but it's not going to hold as tight right where the actual bigger structure of the clamp is, so you alternate backwards. That's one way to do it. I'm going to use bigger clamps for today, just because I don't have one of these, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to swap one off of my car so Carlos can get home today. So we're going to make it happen. Take one of these, throw this on first, and the barb is really levels that are going to hold this and stop it from leaking. So we got that. Put this right on here, just for the purpose of not sitting here and ratcheting this thing down for the next 10 minutes. Just throw this on here, get it close, the rest is by hand. Now one thing I want to do is make sure that when I set this in place that I'm able to get this right back in a good spot. So I don't want this to be too over rotated or anything like that. Clamp placement is definitely important, plus it keeps the car looking cleaner. All your clamps line up and stuff like that. It might be something small, but it goes a long way, especially when you got a turbo system and you know you're running boost pipes everywhere. If all your clamps look like crap, it's not a good look. Yeah, we try to skip that. We don't do that stick here. Oh, caught me. Since we're completely good with the fuel system and pressure, we can throw this back on. That way we're not leaving the fuel system open. And if you can't get the clamp to go on, just wiggle it side to side and it helps walk it in place. Try and keep it towards the top. Don't go tucking it too far around. And like I said, this pig mat is pretty good stuff. Soaks up a lot of it so it doesn't go dripping all over the place. You get to this part, one thing you can do, sometimes it's hard to get a grip on these, you find where the end of the plastic is, and you just put a little bit of pressure, and you see how it actually pushes it out just a tiny bit. If you keep walking it, that's one thing to do if you get in a spot where you're kind of stuck. One thing you can do is get this wedged in just so slightly, and you can try to do this with a popper tool like this. This is like a trim tool. And try not to mess it up. Now the ribs on this is actually much smaller than the one that we're putting on, which is great. These factory clamps are good. They are a pain to take off, but I do have some pretty high hopes for the clamps that we're using today. And like I said, we want to keep this as factory as possible. Hold on to this just so you don't get rid of it and need it later down the line. Throw the hose clamp on, throw the fuel line connector. Like I said, with the barbs, these are a bit bigger. And it's kind of, I wouldn't say fish hooked, but kind of similar. That way it doesn't want to back out. Put that back on there. Don't recommend blasting this with the gun 100%, just so I'm not sitting here for a while. Now, once the clamp actually gets a bit of tension, you're going to get one level of difficulty that'll change, and then when you hit the second one, you're going to get a second level of difficulty. That's when the actual sponginess of the rubber is kind of getting maxed out. You don't want to go past that. If you think you got it and you're not sure, back it off, try it again. You'll get the feel for it. I worked in a transmission shop, and they were very big about using transmission assembly lube on a lot of different things. And the reason that they said it was such a good thing to use is because it turns into water. I mean, I know it's not necessarily water, but if you can assemble a transmission and it won't damage clutches, that's a pretty good situation. So if you go to put this way, there's too much depth right here, and it doesn't like to sit in the connectors. So I set mine up like this. And also the O-ring in here is going to sweep the rest of the residual out of the way. Make sure you lock it in place and pull it. It should not let go, so just make sure, double check. Same deal over here. Double check and kind of push it back into place. Now what I did with this is move this down a bit and make it a little easier, and just pop this up completely. Rotate this out instead of just only yanking, so you don't punch your hood. So that's not fun. I think you have different points on here. I wanted to get this in a place where it will pop back in to a factory location. There you go, good stuff. Make sure none of the clamps are touching on another piece of rubber. So bend that down a little bit. I'm gonna take this rubber hose bracket and rotate it a little bit and still match it up where it's supposed to go. Clip it into place. Nice. Nice. How you doing?
Wait, pop up one more time. Pop your head up. Damn, those are nice wheels.
Okay, so now that we got this done, let's put this back in its home. That's not gonna sit just perfect. You don't want this to get kinked, so just readjust a little bit. This can sit a little bit out, that's fine. You can take this, bend it slightly out of the way if you really feel like doing that. On that note, just so they're not rubbing against each other and possibly wearing, which really won't happen, but you just never know. You don't go too close with that. Get the flush cuts. All right, let's blow this thing up. All right, just tell me if it explodes. I'm gonna start it up.
You ready?
All right, so that part is done. I'm gonna take the battery back off, by the way. But with all that being said, the easiest way that I found to do this was to just completely take the battery out, because there is a grommet in the firewall that we can use to pop the wiring directly through. I think I'm gonna go the other direction. Long screwdriver, a little bit of tape, huzzah, all that fun shit. There's 13 right here with the bracket. Get that on there. Big power. This bracket will come right out. Take the 13. Throw this over here for now. Now the bracket gets wedged in the battery tray. So you want to kind of make it this way first. Make sure you're not caught on here. Here it is. Now if you look all the way back here, there's a small grommet on the firewall. That's what we're going to use to get through to the other side. Oh, from the other side. Oh, my hands are fucked up. Jesus. What do you think? So instead of popping in, and get right over here. Coin tray. This super sweet. Oh, is that your cob? What do you mean no? Yes, it is. What's this? Marlin Club? You and the neighbor hanging out? Marlin? What's this? Key to your heart? Do this. Push on one side, drop it down slightly, And pull on this side, you'll get it just past there. Pops right out. Okay. All right, so under here in the depths of where your feet go, there's a T25 here and a T25 here. We're gonna pop these suckers out real quick. That's the one. All right. Now you already have that boost line through here, so I'm gonna try not to stab it. I'm gonna go on top. And just push this through a little bit, not too much. Okay, now personally I like to do this one specific way. There. I'm going to uncoil this, get this all straightened out. Yeah. I'm gonna move on batteries over here. I can't see a damn thing. This has plenty of space to do things. I'm gonna leave just enough so this has enough slack that it can move if it needs to. Now, I want to actually move this before I start really setting this in place. Just like this is cool. Flush cut it. That way you don't slice your finger off. That one to hold it in place over there. Now it's got a little bit of home. There's a little bit of extra pigtail in here. That way if you need to move this and if you yank it, you don't rip the freaking wires out and disrupt everything. Gotta plan ahead. Super important. These things really don't like to come off that easily. There's not too many ways about it. Try, but I leave these loose so I know what needs to be tightened. Once they're tightened, clip them. That way you know how far you've got on your project. Okay, this goes through. Right here, this piece of foam, I put the screwdriver through basically for a locator, but just, you know, just locate yourself up there. Okay, so screwdriver right here, nice and easy to get to. So watch what we're gonna do. Place this right back through, just in that direction. Not on this side. Okay, so I mean, try not to push this thing too violently through the actual firewall because you will hurt some stuff. We put some tape on here so nothing gets into the actual connectors. Super important. Now, what I do with this, I'm gonna do a few of these because trying to roll this thing around it in this tight little spot is not the best. So, I'm going to actually tear this in half. I'll start with one section of this. Right here, only right there. I'm gonna just get right here. The point of what I'm doing now is to try to remove basically the fact that there's corners and it's gonna catch on an edge, because it will catch on an edge. We're trying to push a square plug through this grommet. It's not gonna go easily. This is just how it is. So, screwdriver, nice and light. Oh. That's all right. It makes its way through. Now don't yank on this super tight, but pull the slack through. Okay. And now the connector didn't get hurt. We didn't get any gunk inside of the actual plug itself. This is probably the most annoying part of doing what we just did. Okay, so now we got this again. Still have a little bit more routing to do, so I'm gonna take one piece and just put it back over the end. Still don't want to get any gunk in there, no dust, no nothing that's gonna alter anything. And from here, we're gonna find the best way to route this. So since I've done this once before, the goal is up over and trying to get through the side of where the actual fuse panel is. It gets tricky. All right, and we're almost there. Almost there. We got the screwdriver. Feed this through the rest of the way. All right, so get back under here. Now, since this boost line is here, I'm not gonna put a ton of pressure on this. It's gonna be really light, just enough to hold it together. A little bit more. Cut. Now from here, I can actually put this section back on. So there's the two pieces of plastic right here. These tabs, this one and this one. That is where you fit. You can see the dust marks on here too, where it's darker, because it was on the plastic tab. So you set those back in place, push it in, and it will line up. This sits right here. And last time, I made the mistake of not, well, I'm gonna slightly offset it. Not 100%, because it does line up with the actual hinge. But that's something to also consider, is where are things going to mesh up on here. So like, when you get this thing all the way down, you do want it to be kind of up slightly. That way you can actually close it. I'm gonna put a bit of a bigger hole towards the top instead of in the corner. I was instructed to do this in the corner when I seen a video, and it worked. I think it could work better. So I'm gonna try that. Yeah, this is what I mean. This gauge has wires on the top where this is angled at. Like if we look at this side profiled, this is gonna sit about here. So going towards the corner is not a terrible idea, but a little bit over more, I feel like it's going to be a better idea. So I already got this step drill set up. I'm going to set right here. That's good. Clean off all the excess. Get a nice fit in there. Quick test fit. Just right up on the top. Try to get that as flat as possible. Check it, see where it sits. I want this thing to be as straight as possible. And then I'm going to sneak each one of these through here individually. Okay, so where this sits is not bad. At this point, I want to really snug these down on the back. So you can see these right here. Do it by hand, not with pliers. Get it in a good spot. Make sure it's straight. Now's a good time to actually clean that with the alcohol pad. This is gonna go about here. And this one over here. And the rest of it just because. Okay, now that we have wiring stuff kind of done, this one's not getting set up so that it's going into anything else besides just this gauge. We just want to know what ethanol is in here. Take this, there's a tab on here so you know which is which. Snaps in place. Now, if I remember correctly with this, we're going to use, what was it? The red, black, and the white, I believe. Okay, so before I go any farther at this, let me just like address this bunch of bullshit. This is fucking ridiculous, dude. We don't do this. I'm gonna make sure I don't zip tie myself into a corner with this, but I will completely just, and then another way to do this, when it looks a little bit loose, you can go one by one by one and just give it a little snug, and then it kind of bunches together a little bit better. And then, okay, that's a ground wire. We'll probably end up reusing the ground wire. This is a hot wire. I'm not going into this right now, we got other shit to do, but this could potentially be a wire that is hot. You don't ever want to leave bare wires just hanging out. This is also like a little flag, like, hey, not connected. You could just clip one of them, get a little bit of room. Sometimes you don't want to clip it and then have the whole thing unravel. Sometimes you just need a little bit of space to work. So it's good not to have to mess with the whole thing. So, something. We can go into standalones and stuff like that, and we don't need to do all that. That's not what we're doing today. So we're gonna go down to the farthest point on the wires and separate the ones that are gonna go together. So being that this is for a plug, I'm gonna isolate the red wire and the black wire and the white wire are going to go together. So you want to at least start them from the bottom in the same direction. Now these ones, the brown and yellow, are not going to be used on this because we're not on full standalone systems or flex fuel type stuff. Kind of just sticking with what we got going on. Want to make sure that the fuel quality is good. So make a couple more little flags, like, hey, over here, this wire is not connected. Plus, you also never run the risk of this accidentally touching onto other wires just because it's bare and then doing something that it shouldn't do and shorting a system. Yes. So, with all this, these two are going to go together. They already pulled these since they're the same length. And I'm going to twist these together. And I'll get back to that. But I'm also going to pull this and twist it. One reason is you want to compress this because you want the butt connector to do what it's supposed to do. It's good so that you can just kind of you can squeeze it and uncrimp it like the way it's crimped this way. If you squeeze it that way and really mess with it, you'll get it to just come off. That way you're not constantly cutting a wire back and back and back and back as you do different things. I mean, this should be a 1, 2, 3 goes type of situation. Now, since this wire is so much bigger, we're going to do this a slight bit differently. We're going to go a bit farther down. Don't cut strands off. Gonna twist all the way from here. And then fold this over just a little bit extra and wrap this. You could wrap it or one way to go about it. Or you can fold to here and then twist from there. Okay, this has to sit just right when I fold it. So you don't want any of the bare wires sticking out. So that should be good right about there. So now when I fold it, touch this onto the end, twist a little bit, and push this part into here. Now you can see that the casing actually protects it. Get this pushed into place. Now push this, then crimp, and then move the crimp slightly, and move the pliers slightly, crimp next to it. I will crimp the whole section, give it a pull. This has to go onto a ground, so we're gonna do something similar. I'm gonna grab the ground connector. Essentially, a little recap real quick. Power wire. We're gonna jump onto one of the fuses that pops on accessory mode. I could test this with a test light. There's a few other ways we could do it. All right, so this is gonna get grounded. There's already one ground that's taken. I'm gonna try and point to it with this. Down here, they use that one. That's the one I would use because it's just easy to get to. There is another 10 millimeter up a bit higher. So I am going to jump onto this one. The whole point of this is to take the ground of the electrical system and get back over and complete the circuit from power to ground and let it run its course. Check something else. I want to see if this connector is going to be the right size. What I wanted to do is just make sure this is going to fit in here, so it looks like it perfectly just clears. So you got to do with this, crimp this thing on here until I knew for sure. And this has quite a bit of extra room, so I'm going to fold this and then bring this through until it's just past the edge. Up a little farther back, move to the edge. I like to do this 3 times. I'm not really a huge fan on crimping things. It's just not how I like to do stuff. I like to solder things, but these are what they are, you know. I'm gonna take this back a little bit, just enough. You can do what you gotta do. So this has just enough room to get up there. So I'm gonna grab that 10 mil. Now since the wire is on top, you're gonna want to put the wire on this side too when you actually screw it in. But we can get this started right here. It'll be fine to be crimped. Or not crimped, but to get started right there. So I'm gonna get it started by hand lightly. I think I have some needle nose over here. Just anything to get this where it's gotta be and keep my hand out of the way in the process. I wanna get this in its new home. Put the ratchet on there. Use your finger to make sure this thing doesn't twist with it. And then kind of hold it from spinning. Get it pretty snug. Pretty snug. So now those are grounded off. The other side of this, I'm going to be working with the power wire. Now, there's a couple different ways that we can do this. So you don't have a test light. So I want to see where the power is with accessory mode. So now that everything is pretty much mocked up, it's in a pretty happy place. We can adjust it as needed. So now is when I'm going to come back over here and actually secure the zip ties where I want them to be. Just make sure that it's not in the way of other stuff that's going to cause issues later. Like this has room, so you can do what you got to do. And this isn't terrible because you're not really pulling this out anytime soon. If you ever need to move anything, just clip these suckers up, put new ones on. Also, one thing that I do like to do is I don't only like to use the flush cuts, but I like to turn the zip ties around. I don't know, I just am OCD'd like that. I hate when people say I'm OCD'd, but dude, I can't stop that shit. It's like, it is what it is. It bothers me. Okay, and slide it back. Put the little arms down. And I have a battery brush. You guys are gonna like this one. A battery brush. This is set a specific way, so you rotate this way. You go the other way, you destroy the brush pretty much. It also has terminal cleaner. Same deal, rotate it one way. So when I take these off, I'll go on here. Try not to blow it at the intake. It's good, it's important. Want to give it a good contact. Not a bad idea to do this specifically for the fact that after a while batteries do get corroded, and it's good to get any dust or whatever that is on it off of it. Quickly kind of slap the battery on. I feel when the thing snugs up. This one, same deal. Slap it on quickly, apply some pressure. Throw this on here. Don't let the back part of this spin. Push it forward. Now, we'll get back to that in a little bit. But that test light that I was talking about, I have something a little different than a test light. If you guys want to do electrical stuff and you don't want to be stuck in the Stone Age, get yourself a power probe. It's a power probe 4. This thing is sweet. But one thing that I'll do, you could use this. Sometimes I'll do this just for the sake of ease. I'm literally just going to use this and go into accessory mode. This thing's sweet because you can use this is the green side, which is ground. You can apply power and ground to things. Comes with little lights in there. I can literally apply battery voltage to it. And if I don't want to apply battery voltage to it, I can use this and I can apply reference voltage, which is like your 5-volt reference. And it's sweet. You can use this to activate solenoids and all kinds of other stuff. I'm gonna see the size of this and then double check on where it could go. 5 amp fuse. So we are going to piggyback the 5 amp fuse onto here. Just make sure that's nice and lined up. Give it a little push. And now, this same setup that used to be only a 10 is now going to be a 10 and a 5. Switch this up because I thought it was just lined up just perfectly, but it wasn't. That one lines up much better because this thing was in the way, and I'm just looking at it like, oh yeah, come on, man. So, since this is decent, I'll route this back through here. And then just give it a little push. Okay. Now these wires are for getting into PCs and stuff like that. I'm gonna route this through just because the final little touches I want to do with this thing installed, because I want it to be in its resting place. So the little hooks on here, line them up, give it a little push, pop it into place. Now it exists in its home. Now you gotta double check also to make sure that everything back here is gonna be just fine. So now that I see that everything fits pretty good, I'm going to tape off these other connectors because we're not using them anytime soon. Oh, before I actually go all crazy, welcome to the party. Ethanol gauge. Now, it's always going to be on, but the thing is, if you want it to turn off, just turn it off. Yeah. And that's kind of it. I'm just trying to get this kind of into a place where it can exist. Out of the way. This is what my brain does all day. It's freaking awful at the same time. As good as that might be in certain respects and areas. Ta-da. This stuff, I like this the best. I ordered like 4 different cans of this, trying to remember which one it is. Permatex battery protector and sealer. This stuff's great. All the other ones act like liquid and they just disappear. You could spray it on there and it just drips off. I try and get this pretty much everywhere. And then I'll leave it alone for a second and then hit a second coat on it. But just for a quick recap, literally bouncing from this GTI to that GTI, doing some other stuff in between. Let's do a little zoom in over here. Got the sensor set up, just enough wire so there's no tension on here. This is clipped back into a good solid place. It's not moving around anywhere. I always put that zip tie just to hold it in place. This one just so it doesn't kind of hang out of there. Go under all of these. This is fine out here. I'd rather do this than start cutting on the fuel line because we still have the connector. We can always put it back. Zip tie its way all the way to a different place. Route it all the way back. Then we got the protector spray on there. Now it's routed through on the grommet, which is safe. It's not gonna vibrate and cut itself apart. We got the whole thing set up. Nice and set up. Everything still works. And then I usually try to use metal stuff on plastic trim, but it's just enough space. Now you can see this awesome maze that I've created from what it used to look like. So I rerouted the heck out of everything so that it all fits in there. Get this whole thing and everything fits. All the little dryers and everything for boost so it doesn't hurt any of the gauge. Yeah, good times. Well, time consuming, pretty simple. The biggest thing to always remember with this is to start the car and verify that there's no leaks here and no leaks here. And now that we actually have this done, I'm gonna have Carlos go do a hot lap and then come back where we're literally going to pull fuel pressure as high as it's gonna go. So a good couple second, third gear pulls just to make sure the fuel pressure goes all the way up to its peak. Bring yourself back over here and we're gonna double check this. If you wanna be extra careful, keep a fire extinguisher with you. You're dealing with fuel stuff. If you're doing a DIY at home and you make a mistake and that clamp's not tight enough, you don't want to be a Roman candle flying down the road in third gear. So just saying, fire extinguisher, it's like 50 bucks, it's worth it. So Carlos, you're gonna go take it for a rip? Yeah, it's okay, you can speak, cameraman. No, you don't want to speak? Why not? What? Okay, you're just gonna mime out there? All right, yeah, okay. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully the install video makes it a bit easier for you. I'm gonna throw some links into the description on the video as far as little things to make the job easier, some tools, the Innovative Motorsports Ethanol Gauge Kit on 829 Tuning, the CJM pod. I got a few other different options. You could fill the coin tray. There's a few different locations, but I'll list some links over to my website, 829tuning.com. And if you guys need help, need parts, check out the website and stay tuned for more stuff. Thanks.